Good morning, friends. For many of us, we are at the end of what has been a really powerful week at Ananda village, which is the founding community that Swami Kriyananda started in the 1960s, which is about 4 hours northeast of here. All week long, we've been participating in what's called Spiritual Renewal Week. And every year at this time, devotees of Yogananda all around the Ananda world gather at Ananda village and also online, which I'm hoping many of you have had an opportunity to participate in. And we spend a whole week just diving deeper into these teachings, diving deeper into this concept of light and what that light means for each one of us, and how we can bring that light into our own lives. And this particular topic, every year the theme is a little bit different, and this theme has been a particularly fun one because it was the battlefield of life and the battle of life and how to fight it with joy, which is a recurring theme that we see throughout scriptures and throughout certainly Yogananda's teachings. And we've had a lot of fun this week with the Mahabharata, this great epic where you have the Kauravas and the Pandavas and these two cousin brothers constantly at odds and fighting with one another. And, you know, we got into all of these wonderful nuances, and throughout the week, everybody was just sharing different versions and interpretations of what that battlefield looks like for each one of us. And our friend Nai Swami Giyandev, on a talk on Tuesday or Wednesday, he coined the term sneak attacks, and he was talking about how our bad habits and our negative thoughts and tendencies, they're like the sneak attacks from the Kaurava army, and they just come in, and before we know it, they've gotten a hold of us. And we've just had this beautiful, lovely drama that's been played out. But the reason I'm sharing all of this, you can go online if it interests you, and you can still sign up and watch all the recordings, which I highly recommend. It's been one of my favorite spiritual renewal weeks in many years. And what we find at the end of every person's talk, every person's story, every person's interpretation of the Mahabharata, and particularly of the Bhagavad Gita, is that it all comes back to light. That it all comes back to the reality, no matter how hard the battle may seem to us, that light always prevails. And that's such a powerful reality and knowing for us to hold on to. Light always prevails. Sometimes, as my friend Shurjo was sharing in a talk yesterday, the rhythm can take much longer than we want it to. So it may not feel that way right in the moment. But as spiritual seekers, as warriors of light, that is the truth that we get to hold on to, which is why the chanting was so beautiful today. And then now we got to sing this wonderful, sweet song. And I almost wanted to say, though I wouldn't put us all through that, but I wanted to say to all of us, we don't even need to talk. Let's just spend the next 20 minutes chanting or singing this song over and over again. Because Swami Kriyananda, who of course wrote that melody and that song, he deceives us. At first you can think, oh, it's just a sweet little melody and just sing it over and over again. But if you listen to the truth of those words, give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. If we said that affirmation over and over and over again, if we sang it into the very core of our being and our knowing for 20 minutes, I promise you at the end of it, we would be transformed. Even in the 6 or so minutes that we got to do it, I was watching all of your beautiful faces, smiling and laughing and having such fun and joy with it. What else is light if not that? Of course, this is the beauty of light. And, you know, our path here and the teachings that Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda have brought to us, this is a path of light. We use the word light over and over again. I was even just tuning into it today in the chants that we were singing. Sorry, hold on one second. In the chants that we were singing and the readings that we were reading, that reading from Atmajoti and from Whispers from Eternity was so beautiful. And I hope you didn't lose the page, because I might have you share it with us one more time at the end. Because it's the very essence, that we walk through the wilderness of our darkness and we get caught and we stumble, or the burrs of our desires that get caught in our heart. Be of good cheer, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, because it all ends in light. And light takes on so many different forms. Light is joy, light is wisdom, light is truth. Everything in light has but one reality, which is uplifting. It's drawing our energy upward. Like a weightless balloon, our soul rises to meet God's joy. And when we really sit with that reality, what is the redeeming light? What is redemption truly for each one of us? I was so grateful as I was contemplating that thought. I drove back from Ananda village last night. The culminating event is Sunday service up there, which is happening right now. But one of the last events that they have is a big Indian banquet and a storytelling. So I was driving home late last night after all of that was over. And of course, just sitting with this topic, I'd spent all day reading various readings and sitting with talks from Swami Kriyananda and Master about it. And then on the ride home, I had a nice 4 hours to just contemplate light and contemplate that concept of redemption, because it's not just the light in this case, it's the redeeming light. And what does that truly mean and for each one of us? And I was feeling such gratitude for the path that these great gurus have brought to us, the path of Raja Yoga and the path of yoga, because it helps us to redefine what that term redemption truly means. I grew up Catholic, and I had a wonderful upbringing in Catholicism. I'm very grateful to have found this path because it opened my understanding of Catholicism even more. But I remember being a little kid, and from the age of about 7 until 14, as you're going through and receiving the different sacraments in the Catholic tradition, you take what's called catechism classes, and once a week you go and you just learn about the Bible and you learn different aspects of what it means to be a good Catholic. And one of the aspects of catechism classes for us growing up was that once a month, they spared us instead of once a week, once a month you had to go to confession. And so you'd stand up, they'd line all of us up, there'd be about 50 kids from the ages of 7 until 14, 15, and we'd all sit in the pews, and one by one we'd come up to the priests and we'd confess. And I can remember being 7 or 8 years old and sitting up, because the little kids had to sit in the front rows, of course. And I can remember sort of sitting there and my feet not actually touching the ground and swinging my feet back and forth, thinking, what am I going to confess? As 8 years old, I couldn't think of a sin. So I guess I was mean to my sister, or maybe I was naughty in some way. But I can remember so vividly swinging my feet, and I'm a little bit of a kind of shy and timid person anyway, so the whole setup of talking to the priest was always a little intimidating for me, and I was just swinging my feet thinking, gosh, you got to think of something bad you've done. It's just so funny when I think about it now, because that's what redemption looked like. It was this Vaishya consciousness, this bartering, right, in the sense of I've done something bad, let me come, and if I'm good enough, if I repent enough, then God's light will shine on me, and then I'll be forgiven, right? Or I can still, up all through kind of my growing up and my adolescence, I remember my prayers were often barters with God. If you can grant me this, then I'll do that, and just that sort of consciousness, that's what we call the Vaishya consciousness, in that sense of the if but, if when. And it was always this reality that there was something outside of us that had the power to heal us, that if we could reach toward that light, then we would find redemption, forgiveness, wholeness, whatever it is that we were seeking. But when I was driving home last night thinking about redemption and what that would look like if I stood up in front of Paramhansa Yogananda and asked for redemption, what would he say to me? And it's the beauty of what we have in these whispers from eternity that Amajoti was reading from. Because redemption from a yogic standpoint is not reaching out for something outside of you. It's simply remembering that that light is already within you. And that light is permeating every aspect of your reality. There is nothing from which to be redeemed. Redemption of the soul is the soul's remembrance of who we truly are, which is why we have these beautiful whispers. And I was thinking several years ago, some of you may remember, I think this was 5 years ago now, time, particularly with the pandemic, has started to play a trick on us. So it might have been, we sort of lost 2 years. So everyone says, oh, it was 5 years ago, but it was actually 7 years ago. But we did a play here, Mahavir and Asha were sort of co-creating this beautiful performance of Whispers from Eternity. And they went through this whole book of prayer demands and poems from Paramhansa Yogananda, and they chose and selected different poems, and they created this narrative story of what is the soul's redemption. And there were 5 of us, myself and James and Saranya and Kashama and her husband Craig. And we played the role of these souls that were being awakened one by one. And why I was thinking about this story was because each one of us had different colors. And over the very opening scene, we all came in and we had these really dark cloaks and we had these dark hoods over our head because the very first whisper that was read was, "Awake, my children, wake up, redeem, redemption, light. Be born back into that light." And I remember the day that we were going through the rehearsal and how much time we spent, each one of us, figuring out how we were going to slink onto this stage in that state of darkness. What it looked like to walk in that darkness, what it felt like to carry that darkness, how we were supposed to lay down, and some of us, depending on our knees and our ability, were in chairs or were on the floor, and we just slunk in all of this darkness. And then Kashama was the first one to awaken, and she woke up and came by one and woke each one of us up. And what I remember distinctly about this day was how much time it took for us to practice and rehearse and figure out how to walk in darkness. And then how quick it was to figure out how to wake up. And how joyful it was to just each one of us, Mahavir and Asha were just saying, just do what feels natural. How would you awaken to God? And the five of us on the stage, well, I know that. And just waking up into the light and the joy. And how natural it was for us to rest in that. Because your soul knows, the soul remembers. And it's simply that somewhere along the way, just as I learned when I was 8 years old or 7 years old, swinging my legs, while I was sitting on those pews trying to think of something to say, some darkness inside of us. It's not that we can't find those parts of ourselves that we struggle with, those habits that we want to change, the attitudes that keep us bound, because what's the opposite of lightness but to be heavy, to be weighed down? So the opposite of the weightless balloon is the anchored balloon. It's not that we don't carry a conscious understanding of those parts of ourselves that we want to work on. That's why we're here. That's why we've been awakened. My friend who was it yesterday in a talk, I think it was Shurjo again, he said very sweetly, he was talking about how the Mahabharata, his interpretation of it was how complex decision-making is and how these characters in this lifetime in the Mahabharata, they may be a good guy, but oh no, last time they were a bad guy, and back and forth, and the complexity of what it means to live in this world that is a play of light and shadow. And very sweetly at one point he said, most of the world isn't confused. They know what they want and they're out there doing it. He said, those of us on a spiritual path, we're always confused because we're trying to find Dharma. We're trying to find what's right. We're asking the question, how do I become better? How do I be a warrior of the light? How do I seek that light intentionally? Because what we're ultimately seeking is that union. It's that space of oneness. Because what is darkness except just that little shade of shadow, that little shade of gray that's keeping us apart from the divine? So the answer, of course, to how do we redeem ourselves through that light, how do we remember who we truly are, is to carry God with us, to carry a consciousness of Divine Mother with us constantly, to remember that she's never apart from us. And of course, that's the great trick of Maya, that it starts to teach us the ego's very job is to tell you that you are separate. And when you're separate, it starts with just a little, I was thinking about anything, a little tear or a little chasm that starts in I love icebergs and I love Antarctica and I love cold weather. I think someday I'm going to have to go back there and live in incarnation as a penguin or something in Antarctica just to finish out that karma that I have. But I love icebergs because it starts with just the tiniest little chink in the armor. But then over time, slowly, because it's this moving thing, that chink gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have this chasm that you can just slip right down through. And when I was thinking about that and what that looks like to be one with the divine, and just these tiny little seeds of doubt, these tiny seeds of separation, because when you have a clean surface, when you have just a clean surface of that iceberg, it absorbs and reflects the light purely. But as soon as there's chinks, as soon as there's chasms that are created and chips in that armor, there's space for darkness. There's space for shadows. The play of light and dark begins. And, that's the great divine Leela, divine play that each one of us are in, that we're living in a world of those shadows. We're living in a world of that light and that darkness. So on the one hand, we can't quite get out of it. However, we've been given the secret, which is to remember that we are one with the divine, to carry Divine Mother with you constantly. And there's a beautiful story that I was reading. I just happened to open the New Path the other day. I was preparing for our discipleship course, which meets on Thursday nights, and reading different aspects from the autobiography and from the New Path. And I opened to the chapter In the Spirit. I just said to Swamiji, what should I read? And he was preparing me for today, not for Thursday night. But it was so beautiful because I read a story that that Master had told, Yogananda had told to Swami and to the other monks. And many of you will remember it once I start sharing it. But it's just so perfectly and beautifully aligns with what we're speaking to today. And he talks about a great saint named Namdev. And Namdev was a great devotee of Krishna. And he would go to the temple every single day, and with great devotion, he would pray to Krishna. And he prayed with such love and such devotion that Krishna would often appear to him. So he became a very revered saint, and many people came and they wanted to worship at his feet, because here was this great devotee who harnessed the power of the divine and could call upon Krishna and have Krishna appear to him. But then also in the town there was another great revered saint who happened to be a potter, and his role was to sculpt things out of clay. And so one day these two great saints are sitting sort of side by side, as luck and circumstance would have it, and their devotees were there, and everyone was just feeling the joy and the inspiration of being in the presence of these two great saints. And the potter decided that he wanted to spend a little bit of time checking on the disciples and the souls in the space, and just checking to see how well they were doing on their spiritual path. And as the story is written in the New Path, what Swami Kriyananda writes is, how does a potter check if his pots are good? He taps on them. So he was going around, this saint is going around to every single one of the meditating devotees and just slapping on their back, tapping on them, saying, oh, no kinks in this one, no kinks in this one, going all around the room. And then he gets to Namdev, and what does he do? Gives a little whack to Namdev, and Namdev gets a little bit upset by this, and he says, we're equals. Why is this saint checking on me? And so he stands up and he says, why would you check my spiritual awakening? We're equals. And this other great saint, the potter, says, I found one with a chip in it. And so Namdev, humiliated, he leaves the space and he comes back to the temple and he prays in front of Krishna. And he says to Krishna, who appears to him, how could you let me be humiliated in that way? And Krishna's response is, well, you have a chip. And so Namdev, humbled, says, well, what do I do? And Krishna says to him, you need a guru. And Namdev says, but I have you. You're the Lord incarnate standing in front of me. Why do I need a guru? And he says, because it's only through the guru, through one who has awakened in me, that you can find me. Such is my law. And so he says, okay, tell me who my guru is. And he gives him the name of a man, and he goes off in search of him. And then he comes to the town, the countryside where this guru is living. And he starts to inquire and to ask around where the guru is. And every single person that he's asking, he's saying, that man's a crazy man. You don't want to find that man. But he keeps persisting one after another until he comes to the courtyard of the temple. And he sees a man a little bit disheveled and odd looking, just kind of lying and basking in the courtyard. And he walks over to him and inquires if he's the man that he's looking for, and of course he is. But as Namdev is just about to speak to this man, he notices that the man, as he's lying down, that his feet are touching the corner of a Shiva lingam, a statue in honor of Shiva, and he's outraged by this. And he says, how dare you disrespect a Shiva lingam like that, this aspect of the divine? And the man says, oh, I'm sorry. My body is very old. I didn't realize. Can you help me by moving my feet? And Namdev steps down and he moves his feet. And then where he moves his feet, another Shiva lingam appears. Then he moves his feet again. And where he places his feet down, another Shiva lingam appears. And finally, after one more time, because it takes us a few times, Namdev gets the point. And he bows at the feet of this man, and he says, you are my guru. And he says that I see where you step, God appears, God manifests. And this man, his guru says to him, yes, that is the secret, to seek God everywhere, to know that God is everywhere, is in everything. That is how we find the divine. That is how we live in the light. And so then he starts to worship God in everything, to feel God's light everywhere. And months go by, and he finally remembers to go back to the temple and to worship Krishna. And so he walks into the temple and sits down, and he's worshiping Krishna, and Krishna appears, and he says, "You haven't come to see me. You were so devoted. I haven't seen you in months." And Namdev says, "Why would I have to come to this very spot to worship you when I feel God in everything?" And what is Krishna's response? There are no more chinks. And it's so beautiful for each one of us to remember, because that's the very essence of it. Finding that light, living in that light, redemption, as the reading tells us, on every level, spiritually, physically, emotionally, redemption is remembering that we are children of the light. And the way that we do that is to remember that God is everywhere. I'll leave us with just one final image, which is a famous one that we all know from Yogananda. And it's such a perfect image for what we're speaking to today. And Yogananda, when he was a teacher at the Ranchi school, he would often bring the boys in the school to go and to watch the movies. And they would sit down and they would come in and start to enjoy the movie. And the legend goes, or the stories go, that just when the movie was starting to get good, Yogananda would tap the boys on their shoulder and he'd have them turn around. And it's so perfect to do it in this temple because you turn around and there's the spiritual eye. And he would say, "Look behind you. Where is this whole show coming from?" And of course, it's coming from just one singular beam of light. All that you see, all that you are experiencing on that screen comes from one beam of light. And it's the perfect challenge for each one of us. Not even a challenge, the right word isn't coming to me. The offering. It's the perfect offering, an opportunity for each one of us. Right when the story is getting good, getting scary, getting intense, getting overwhelming, all we have to do is turn around and remember, where is it all coming from? One singular beam of light. It's all a play of Divine Mother's Leela. Everything that is happening to us. And it doesn't, I'm not saying this in a glib way, doesn't make it easy when we're in the midst of those challenging moments. But how do we carry that redemption with us? We simply remember, Divine Mother has not abandoned us. She is always with us. That light is everywhere. Everywhere that we step, Shiva Lingams can appear, one after another. That beautiful story, I forget who the devotee, who his guru was, but his name was Padma something. Someone in this room. What is it? Padmapati? Padmapada. And he was a great devotee of someone. And but Shankaracharya, thank you, who was standing on the other side of the river. And he saw his guru, and he just goes running across the river without a thought for any of the dangers, doesn't stop for a moment over the river. And everywhere that he stepped, a lotus leaf carried him across the river, which is how he got the name Padma, which I'm not going to say again. Padmapada, thank you. But it's the beauty for each one of us, that when we carry that love in our heart, when we remember that that redeeming light is coming from within, it's not coming from outside of us. It's wonderful to have rituals to help to remind us and to purify us. It's wonderful to be a little kid to sit there and say, let me think about how I could be better. Let me think about how I can do better. Or to have a fire ceremony where we get to offer all of our karma, all of our habits and likes and dislikes into the fire of transformation. We need these rituals to help us and to remind us. But we also have to remember that that light comes from within. That transformation is not grace that descends down if we become good enough. That it's simply remembering that that light is everywhere. I'll leave us with one of the final lines from the Festival of Light, which if you've ever counted, I think I counted once, we say light over 50 times in the Festival of Light. So listen to it now as you hear it. But here we come to the fourth and last stage of the soul's long journey through time and space, the redemption. I offer the little light that is in me into thy blazing light of infinity. That's the secret for each one of us.
Most High, our Heavenly Father, all our lives we dedicate to Thee. All our labors, us each a channel of thy peace. When in darkness, guide us from above. Where there's sorrow, may we sow thy joy. Where there's hatred, may we share thy love. Lord Most High, our Heavenly Father, all our lives we dedicate to thee. All our labors, all our joys and woes, all our pleasure, all our melody. Make us each a channel of thy peace. When in darkness, guide us from above. Where there's sorrow, may we sow thy joy. Where there's hatred, may we share thy love. Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say.
Not so bad, right? Okay, so now all together, let's sing that twice through. Together.
Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men
One more
say.
time.
Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say.
Okay, now we're going to have some fun. See if we can do this. Okay, so let's split the choir in half. Okay, so all of y'all are going to sing with this half of the choir, and all of y'all are going to sing with this half of the choir. Now, the hardest part is knowing when to stop, okay? Just like in so many things in life. So what we're going to do is this half is going to start, and then about halfway, when they get halfway through this song, we're going to start this half of the room, okay? Now, see if I can keep this straight in my brain. But basically, when I'm looking at one of you, if you see me do this, that just means hold the last note for a really, 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 really long time, and the other half will find you, and we'll all sing that last note together. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, it usually works. Okay, so here we go.
Give me a light to light my way. Give me a light to